Good morning, you all. Thank you for attending. I'm going to introduce State Attorney Monique Worrell, who will bring you an update on the case from the tragic shooting from Jones High School.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Regarding the shooting at Jones High School on November 22nd, resulting in the murder of Jermaine Brown, I want to discuss in further detail my office's decision not to pursue charges against the individual who was arrested in connection with this murder. I'm not going to be naming that individual because our office has not filed charges against him because we have determined that there was not sufficient evidence to do so. And in keeping with someone being innocent until proven guilty, I have determined that it is in the best interest of the integrity of the law to not name that individual because he is no longer a suspect in this case. Although we deal with tragedy on a daily basis, in our office, I can't even begin to imagine the pain that Mr. Brown's family is dealing with right now, especially given the circumstances of the death of their child. I spoke with Mr. Brown's father recently to personally explain to him our office's decision and to encourage him that we are still willing to work with the Orlando Police Department regarding the prosecution of any suspect that is presented to us and that we have enough evidence to prosecute. And as a result of that conversation, it's kind of led to what I want to discuss with you all today. The facts just didn't support prosecution against the individual who was arrested in this case. There wasn't any physical evidence that connected him to the shooting. The only evidence came from a 15-year-old witness who was also in a group that was involved in an altercation in the opposite group that the suspect was involved in. When asked to describe the shooter, the witness provided a description of the shooter's clothing that did not match the clothing that the suspect who was arrested. The witness identified the shooter by a nickname that was different than the nickname that the suspect who was arrested went by. The witness did not know the person that she identified, and she had never before seen their face. Complicating matters, at the time of the shooting, the person who shot and killed Mr. Brown was wearing a mask. So the witness must have only been identifying the shooter by their clothing. And that wasn't clear during the interview. The day after the suspect was arrested, the witness was shown a photo lineup which contained his photograph, and the witness was unable to identify the suspect as the individual who was the shooter on that evening. The witness was also not truthful with law enforcement when she was asked about an individual who was involved in the group that she was a part of, and that individual's possession and use of a firearm that evening. The witness's statement was also contradicted by another witness who was with Mr. Brown when he was shot. He told police that he and Mr. Brown were running when Mr. Brown was shot. However, the witness stated that Mr. Brown was leaning against a car on his phone when the shooter walked or ran up to him and shot him at close range. As a result of these facts and inconsistencies, my office was unable to proceed with charges against the individual who was arrested in this case. As I said repeatedly over the last several months, law enforcement has a burden of probable cause when they make an arrest. That is, that the individual who they've arrested probably committed the crime that they have arrested them for committing. When that case comes over to this office, we have an ethical burden of being able to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. Meaning that when we go to court and we present a case to the jury, we have to be able to prove beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that a crime was committed and that the individual who we are prosecuting was in fact the individual who committed that crime. It is very important, and I don't think it can be overstated, the difference in our burdens. When we're provided a case from any of the 20 different law enforcement agencies with whom we work, we have to meet those requirements that law enforcement does not. The state attorney's office is not an extension of law enforcement. We are an independent law enforcement component, and we have ethical responsibilities to ensure the integrity of the cases that we present to the court. Now, I understand that it's frustrating for law enforcement agencies to see a case that they have built be dropped due to lack of prosecution. And to avoid this, we encourage them to communicate with us before making arrests whenever possible, especially in serious and violent cases. And through that dialogue, we can explain from the beginning whether or not sufficient evidence exists for us to file charges prior to their making an arrest. The reason it's important for this to happen prior to them making an arrest is because the law allows our office to bring charges in a murder case at any time, even decades after the crime was committed. That's why you hear a lot about cold cases, where cases are filed in a homicide case decades later. As long as the individual has never before been placed under arrest. Because once an individual is arrested, the state must file charges and bring the individual to trial within 90 days if they're a juvenile, and within 175 days for a felony case as an adult. If we do not, speedy trial expires, and that individual can never again be charged for that offense. This is critical for both our law enforcement partners as well as our community to understand. Law enforcement makes arrests for several reasons, and I don't claim to know all of them, but I know that sometimes when a horrific event takes place, there's community pressure to bring an offender to justice. There's community pressure to help the community to feel safe again. So they may rush to make an arrest in order to accomplish that outcome. Sometimes they make arrests because they believe that an arrest is necessary to protect the safety of the community. And these are valid reasons for them to move forward. However, when law enforcement stands in front of the media and touts an arrest and compares that arrest to convictions, it puts the onus on my office to follow through and get a conviction. And unfortunately, in too many instances to recount today, the evidence needed to support an arrest is not strong enough to merit a conviction. Under my administration, this office will not operate on a throw it against the wall to see what sticks mentality. We respect the rule of law. We understand what it takes to move a case from probable cause to reasonable doubt, and we will not ignore the facts where they are lacking. The method of let's just try to force a conviction is a disservice to the pursuit of justice. It compromises the integrity of convictions and wastes the scarce resources of this office and the court system, as well as taxpayer dollars. When someone is arrested who we can't file charges against, it disappoints the victims' families. It disappoints the communities. And it puts us in a position where we have to start all over again. My office issued a statement on Monday vigorously defending our decision not to bring charges in this case. That statement was focused on dispelling the baseless rumors that my office doesn't prosecute cases. In doing so, the statement also criticized the investigation done by Orlando Police Department. I regret the harshness of that criticism. because it stands only to further divide us and continue the finger pointing that exacerbates the problem rather than providing solutions. I am focused on solutions. All of our agencies are short-staffed. We're struggling to fill vacancies. Many of our employees are new and just learning their jobs, and many of our more tenured employees are burning the candle at both ends, carrying the brunt of the work. We have offered training to both the Orlando Police Department and the Orange County Sheriff's Office so that we can all work together to build better cases. Up until this point, we've been unable to coordinate that training, but we are opening our office on April 13th and 14th for the first of several trainings to all of the law enforcement agencies that we serve. Our goal is to work collaboratively with our law enforcement partners for the safety of our community. To the men and women on the front lines, the prosecutors, the deputies, and the officers, you don't deserve to have your work scrutinized and publicly criticized in the way that has become the new normal. Many of you are new to this profession, and you have nothing but the best intentions in the work that you do. I was in the elevator yesterday as I was leaving the office, and there was an officer who was meeting with one of my prosecutors. And it was ironic because what are the chances that I would be in the elevator when an officer would ask one of my prosecutors, and I don't even think he knew who I was, we're working on some cases and we'd like to run them by you to make sure that we get it right. These men and women want to do their jobs, and they want to do their jobs right. And they have been caught in the crossfire of disagreements between agency heads. And it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to our community. I want all of you to know that you have my unwavering support, and I will do everything that I can so that our offices can work collaboratively for the safety of our community. To the media, you have a very powerful tool. I encourage you to use your voices for the education of the community regarding matters surrounding public safety. I urge you to stop sensationalizing disagreements between agency heads, because while it may be entertaining, it is detrimental to the well-being of our community. The people of this circuit deserve our very best, and that is exactly what we will work to provide.
We'll now open up for questions. If you could raise your hand and identify your station, we will call on you one at a time, and starting with you.
Hi, Catherine Silver with News 6. In response to the release you put out about this case, Orlando Police Chief Smith said that some of the information you included is actually harmful to their ongoing investigation. What's your response to that?
I disagree respectfully. I don't want to get into the details of why, but I disagree. Their investigation and any individuals that come out after the fact as a result of their investigation won't be compromised in any way. The investigation as it relates to the suspect that has previously been arrested isn't able to produce a conviction anymore. So none of the information that we've released with regards to that particular individual have compromised the prosecution of that case in any way.
Yes.
Christina Watkins, Watch 2 News. You said you talked to Mr. Brown's father about your decision to not move forward with charges with the 17-year-old. What did he say? What was his reaction to that? And did he encourage the community to keep an eye out, come forward with anything at all?
So he was disappointed, understandably so. And he didn't encourage the community to do anything, but I stand by the statement encouraging the community to come forward with any information they may have regarding the shooting that took place that evening. You know, a lot of times we will have witnesses who will come forward and they will speak to law enforcement and they will provide statements. And then by the time we get to the point of prosecution, those witnesses are no longer wanting to cooperate. So while I've addressed law enforcement, I've addressed my prosecutors, I've addressed the media, I want to say to the community that in order for us to have successful prosecutions, we need your help. When you see something, you've got to say something. Otherwise, we can't help to get dangerous individuals off the street. And I understand that it can be intimidating and people want to keep their head down and mind their own business, but that's not going to help us to remove dangerous people from the streets.
Yes.
Denali Witrago from Univision. According to your statements today and the past that you did, are you saying that OPD and the sheriff's office are not doing right their job?
I'm saying that our burdens are different, and it's important that we understand each other's burden, and that when they make arrests, that it's great that they can make probable cause out of their arrest, but in order for us to make convictions, we've got to be able to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. So if we can work together on the front end, then we can all enjoy successful convictions on the back end.
Jeff Allen, Spectrum News 13. You updating this case today, how much of that comes from the intense scrutiny that you are now under the governor? You've said that you even think that he is possibly building a case for suspension. How much does that play into you detailing this case and kind of really giving all these more details on these cases that you may not normally be doing?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Not at all. I ran my campaign on transparency. I said that I would be transparent. Unfortunately, there's lately been a whisper campaign building. Whether or not it's related to the governor or not is irrelevant. There have been a lot of stories coming out that my administration doesn't prosecute cases. That's just not true. So I think that it's necessary for me to come out as often as I can to come out and let the community know, here's a case we're not prosecuting, here's why. Because it's one thing to say we're dropping cases, but the why is important as well. And for you to only report the fact that the state attorney dropped X amount of cases without also explaining the why is a disservice to the community.
Hi, Valerie from Fox 35. Do you think that only that sole witness was intimidated if she said something different to police and then something different to you?
I don't know. I don't have a basis for knowledge in that. Yeah.
And it was a prosecutor, it wasn't the state attorney that she spoke to. Yes.
Melissa Thomas with Florida National News. I know previously you used to do town halls. I know we've been to a couple that were happening in Osceola County. Is your office going to continue to do those in order to not only utilize the media to educate the community, but to educate the community directly? Are you guys going to continue doing that?
Yes, I'm definitely going to continue to do town halls. Unfortunately, I have been extremely busy over the last month defending my office's prosecution rate. But it is my intention to continue to educate the community, and I encourage the community to take part in those town halls. One of the things that was discouraging to my staff in hosting those town halls is that the attendance was, not really there. And for people to volunteer to come out after hours to educate the community, we need community participation in that. We want to engage with the community, and we want to make sure that people come out and take advantage of that.
I'm Edwin from Univision, Orlando. Some parents in Orange think that the justice don't punish with enough heart, with enough strong force, the teenagers that commit crimes. What do you think about it?
Well, that's why I've proposed legislation that will give the courts more jurisdiction over youth and keep them in the juvenile justice system longer to more effectively work towards their rehabilitation. So I agree with that statement, and I'm working to do everything I can to change that.
Jeff with Channel 9 News. How do you characterize your relationship with Chief Smith now? Do you think that this case has impacted that relationship? And then you also mentioned some of your issues with the department heads. How do you move forward now to try to heal these relationships and work together?
I think that we all want the same thing. And if we can focus on our common goal, which is public safety for the people of the Ninth Judicial Circuit, and less on our personal differences or ideologies, I think that we'll be able to do it just fine.
Yes, and then
What's the status on the 15-year-old who was also arrested and charged with attempted second-degree murder? Is there an update on that?
So because that's a juvenile case, I'm not going to be able to provide any update on that at this time.
When you meet on April 13th and 14th with the agencies, what do you plan to do?
We're going to train them on getting beyond probable cause, right? So if you want to give it a title, it's going beyond probable cause. Because I understand the frustration that there may be of law enforcement officers who do their very best to build a case, and then it comes over here and the case is dropped. So I want them to know, here are some things that help us with our prosecution to meet our burden of beyond a reasonable doubt. And if we can do that on the front end, then I think we'll all be able to see the successful prosecutions on the back end.
was that your question?
Yes.
Okay. And then Jeff. Catherine, then Jeff.
You talked about some of the struggles you've had with hiring staff. Can you tell us just an update of how many openings or people you're trying to hire, and also what solutions you think there are to fix this problem?
Camilla, do you know what our current vacancies are?
It's somewhere around 30.
Okay.
30 openings.
All right, so we currently have 30 vacancies. And just to give you kind of a idea of where we are, last year this office processed 54,000 cases with like 130 attorneys. Okay, that's not enough. It's not enough even when we're fully staffed. And what it means is that our attorneys are working at the rate of, one attorney doing the work of two attorneys. And it's very difficult. What are solutions to that? I'm hoping that the legislature will pass another increase. Our attorneys are grossly underpaid. The people who work here do it because they're passionate about the work. And that's one of the reasons that it's so disappointing that their work is being publicly criticized in the way that it is. Because the people who work here don't do it for fame or fortune. They do it because they care about the safety of this community. So public support of these public servants will help. Increase in salary will help. And we've also proposed a lot of creative solutions with regards to bringing a daycare in-house that will help. So there's a lot of things that we're working on to try to build the morale within this office. But I'll tell you that the distractions that have happened over the last month, where individuals are being singled out and being made to fear the loss of their jobs, hasn't helped.
Jeff.
My understanding is in some jurisdictions, the state attorney's offices will actually send investigators out to the crime scenes to work with the law enforcement agencies. And I don't know if that goes on here, but is that something that you guys do?
So not our investigators. When there's a homicide, our homicide lawyers go out to the crime scenes when they are available to. We saw that happen with the shooting that took place in Pine Hills a few weeks ago, and it's not uncommon for that to happen. So not that our investigators go out, but our homicide prosecutors will go out to a homicide. Our prosecutors will go out to a crime scene at some point if they're taking a case to trial. They'll go out so that they can better understand the crime scene for themselves. So there is a lot of collaboration that goes on. We just need more.
Do you know if that happened at Jones High School? In that shooting?
Whether or not,
There was an attorney that went out there and
I don't know. Is my homicide chief here?
No, he's not.
Okay. I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Which case?
Jones High School.
I don't know.
Okay.
Are there any more questions? Yes, Catherine.
If I may, the last time we were here, we were talking about the case against Keith Moses and the Pine Hill shootings, and you mentioned you were filing a slew of new charges, none of which were first-degree murder. Can you tell us when a grand jury might be convened?
I cannot, because the meeting of grand jury is secret, and I'm not going to do anything that would identify that, but I will tell you that it's forthcoming.
Are there any other questions? Thank you for coming.